Greetings everybody, this is Kind Pepper. Do you remember your childhood? You might think back to the games you used to play, or the friends you made at school, or your neighborhood, and the conversations you had with your old friends. Maybe about the newest Call of Duty games, that hilarious internet meme. Or what about a boogeyman? When you read up on a website, maybe creepypasta or There's Something Awful forum, in which details a faceless man who stalks you in the forest, relentlessly pursuing you until he finds you. Maybe he'll take you to another ungodly dimension to torture you forever, or he'll rip you limb from limb, and then stick your remains onto a tree. Or maybe he'll turn you into one of his proxies, controlling you for his bidding. Perhaps as a kid this led you to avoid the forest nearby and return home as soon as it grows dark, sleeping with a blanket over your whole body, hoping he's not looming over you, waiting for you to peek out and stare into his soulless, eyeless face. But it was just stories, nothing to be afraid of. Just an urban legend. You got older and matured, finding the character just another entertaining mythos. But one day in mid-2014, you might have heard a disturbing story of two mentally unwell teenagers who attempted to sacrifice their friend's life. What could make someone do something so horrible? Apparently, for nothing more than that same bedtime story you feared as a kid. Yes, I'm talking about the viral internet sensation known as the Slender Man, a tall, faceless figure with a well-kept tux and long tendrils made for grabbing you. He was a very popular but niche creepypasta, with most people getting the first taste of him with the Something Awful forums, but mostly the 2009 Marble Hornets ARG about the Slender Man, or the Operator as he's called, along with his proxies. However, as interesting as the original mythos and ARG is, we won't be discussing that tonight. While Marble Hornets did start interest in the original mythos, it wasn't quite his breakout role. In 2012, Slender had a sudden boom onto the scene, with the release of the now classic indie horror game known as Slender the 8 Pages. With most people not daring to play it themselves, they found it more comfortable to watch YouTubers play it and get scared for them, while fans of the series making their own games, notably the Shadow of Slender games, in which some of the maps would reach similar, if not the same amount of notoriety as the original Slender. All of this fame finally accumulated to the AAA release, an official sequel to Slender the 8 Pages known as Slender the Arrival. It was such a time to be alive. So let's relive the glory days. For this Halloween special, I will be playing through all of the iconic Slender Man games. I will be dissecting each of them and reading trivia off of the Slender Wiki for each game. Links to the wikis and any source will be in the description if you're interested. Do be warned, this video was recorded by a big man baby who needed to play these games with his friends on call, as he was too scared to play alone, though eventually he did tough it out. And you might see moments of pure wussiness and sporadic gameplay from a player who can't handle a spooky game. Now, sit back, relax, grab yourself a nice pumpkin latte and a soft blanket, and turn off the lights. It makes it harder for Slender to find you. Now, I'll take you back to my old, forgotten friends' games. This is Remembering the Slender Man. Oh, did you expect the 8 pages first? Seems you didn't know Slender as well as you may have thought. Slender Man 2011 was a game made by the Green Meteor team, inspired by the Marble Hornets ARG. It's an interesting little game with a unique art style, being a mix of 3D and 2D elements. The game starts with your car breaking down as you're sent out to find help, until you find a house. You invite yourself in and investigate further. The house is empty, aside from birthday decorations. As you walk through and find the kitchen, you see a little boy all alone. But turns out, he's not alone. Continuing further, you find a TV and a VHS. Once you insert it into its player, you see a face and are attacked. Interestingly enough, this is the first in-game appearance of proxies in a Slender game, beating Slender the Arrival straight to the punch. After you're attacked, you find another VHS that tells you to go to a red building, and a compass to help lead you to it, while you're being chased by the Slender Man. As you go over to the tower, you use a crank to open the door, only to be greeted by a skull-faced crow and another proxy. After killing the proxy and chasing the crow for a key, you take the key to a door, which holds a gun and a VHS. The VHS giving you a message: do you want to be alone? You take the gun and hunt down Slender and the remaining proxies and win. The game is really short and doesn't offer too much. It doesn't have much on its wiki, not even a trivia page, so I can't really give you that much information about it. The gameplay really could have been better. To be fair, it's a 2011 indie game, but some problems do present themselves, like getting stuck on doors from time to time or the nauseating running animation. The game isn't too challenging either. You can probably beat it within 5 minutes if you really wanted to. Despite this game being a Slender game, he wasn't a very active threat, relying mostly on his proxies to attack you. While I do like the art style, none of the models were very intimidating. The scariest part about this game was downloading it off of its rather sketchy website, hoping I wasn't going to get a virus. However, I would be lying if I said this game didn't spook me from time to time. Okay, let me through the fucking door. Slender, if you're chasing me while I'm trying to figure this shit out, I want... Jesus! Fuck you! Oh my god! It was a pretty decent, fun game, but it's not the strongest of starts. Safe to say, Slender Man 2011 made you jump, so Slender the 8 Pages can make you scream. Now this is where it truly starts. Slender the 8 Pages was the game that pushed Slender Man into the limelight, with countless videos of people pranking their friends or little siblings with this game, along with Let's Players playing this game for the audience only to scream into their webcams. Unlike the linear and rather easy game of Slender Man 2011, 8 Pages is a lot more difficult, being that you have no compass or map to guide you, and while Slender has no proxies, he doesn't need them. Slender is perfectly capable by himself. You see, there are pages scattered across the map, 10 possible locations with only 8 that spawn in. After all, it's not called the 8 Pages for nothing. Once you start collecting pages, Slender will spawn in. At first keeping his distance, watching you, stalking you, until you collect more pages, or take too long searching. Either way, Slender will get more aggressive. You can tell his aggression level by the ambience that plays. Starting with a more subtle one. Slender is stalking you, probably getting closer, and teleporting a bit frequently. Not likely to outright kill you unless you stare at him. Then proceeding to a more intense version when you collect about 4 pages. Now Slender is more aggressive and likely trying to kill you this time, and constantly close by. He will try to predict where you're going and try to cut you off or stay close behind you, or worse, he might even teleport in front of you. This only gets worse once you collect 6 pages, and Slender is at his most aggressive phase. He is behind you at all times, and sometimes if you let him get too close, he'll turn you around and end your game. Not only that, he'll start teleporting in front of you much more frequently. If he corners you in the bathroom complex, well, forget about getting the pages. Slender is the only constant threat you have to deal with, and he makes sure you know he's there. His presence is always looming over you, either figuratively or literally. He makes you paranoid, constantly checking every corner, doubting every shadow, and never daring to turn around, in the constant fear he's right behind you. The more you play, however, the more familiar the game becomes, as you start recognizing landmarks and potential page locations. The map of Slender might seem complicated at first, but once you learn it, and cheat with a map on your second monitor like I did, you find out it's just a big circle with 2 landmarks in the middle. You can make a plan of action if you really need to. However, unlike most other horror games where learning the game makes it easier, Slender Man doesn't have that problem. Slender is still a very competent and scary threat. Because of that, the game from start to finish is very intense and a very scary time. Besides, even if you do win, we both know how this ends. Now, for some trivia. 8 Pages is the first Slender game to present Slender with his tendrils. Not the first time in media, though. He was portrayed with tendrils in the original creepypasta photographs. Slender in this game is portrayed with peachy color skin as opposed to his more ghostly white pale skin that the unofficial and official Slender portrayals show him with. He also has contours on his face for whatever reason. There are some modes you can unlock by winning, depending on the version you get. One where it turns the game into daytime, and in version 0.9.7, there was also a secret mode called $20 mode, which was removed due to copyright. Despite being made popular by Marble Hornets lore and even appearing in the later sequel, proxies do not appear in this game. The pages you collect can spawn in 10 possible landmarks, those being silo, oil tankers, bathroom complex, tunnels, cutted trees, crosswalk, large rocks, creepy tree, blue truck and red truck, and mobile home. The pages you collect hold messages and drawings about the Slender Man, including always watches, no eyes, can't run, don't look or it takes you, follows, a drawing of Slender Man among trees, help me, leave me alone, and finally, no, 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 no. Slender the 8 Pages was a huge hit. Everyone was talking about it, either downloading it for themselves or watching a YouTuber play it, with the attention of famous Let's Players giving 8 Pages a huge boost. This time of the internet was known as the Slender Craze. Everyone knew about Slender. You truly had to be there to understand just how big it was. People were making Slender songs, a ton of fan animations were made, including Slender's Girlfriend, a satirical take of how 8 Pages' story began, and How It Should Have Ended Slender Games, which matches both Slender, the 8 Pages, and the Hunger Games. SlenderMan mods were added to many games during this time as well, like Gary's mod or Minecraft. There were also a ton of Slender sighting footage of kids and teens having their friends dress up as Slender, pretending they caught the myth on camera to scare or entertain the internet, along with many short films like Fathom. Another popular trend was pranking their friends with Slender Man, either by making them play the game without telling them that it's a horror game or by dressing up as Slender and scaring seemingly unknowing people. While the internet had fun being scared of the faceless demon, they also had their fair share of poking fun at the game. Pro Jared's How to Make Slender Not Scary, acting as a comedic tutorial to get through the 8 Pages without getting scared.
Tip number 4, throw Slender Man a rave.
It didn't work for me, by the way. There was also Markiplier's The Fall of Slender, where Slender Man is a disheveled sex offender and heroin addict.
After the rape trials of '09, you'll require an immunity for all your child molesting ways.
Along with Markiplier's Slender Rap, which isn't half bad. In fact, Markiplier gained more popularity through his Slender videos, along with many other YouTubers jumping onto the craze, like PewDiePie, Yami Mash, Cinnamon Toast Ken, and White Boy Theist. Seventhist. It's hard to say his name. And many, many others. The internet wasn't safe from this faceless monster. In fact, they all loved him. Slender's popularity was at its peak, but one game wasn't enough, and while a AAA sequel to Slender the 8 Pages was in its works, two fans known as Mark Steen and Ray Birds decided that they were going to make their own unofficial spin-off games known as Slender Shadows. And while other popular Slender fan games were made during this time, we'll be focusing on the Shadow games, as they were the most popular. The question is, how do you play them? Now, admittedly, Slender Shadow gave me some trouble. The official site is down, so you have to look through GameJolt, itch.io, or IndieDB. Now, the problem is that there is technically two versions. When I downloaded Slender Shadows, I thought I downloaded the one I played as a kid, when I really downloaded the remastered versions, which uses Unity and looks and plays rather differently than the original games. And I really don't like it. It's not the same as when I played it as a kid. A lot of the environment feels different, and Slender has an odd default animation that ruins any intimidating factor he has. He's just standing there, looking around like he lost his keys, looking like a dope. However, I did find the original versions, and they gave me more problems, mainly with trying to record them, as they can't go into window mode or have their resolution changed, and frustratingly enough, it also locks my cursor to the game, so I can't leave the application unless I turn off the game. So I might play both the 2012 original and the 2013 remakes. but I'm mainly going to focus on the original 2012 releases of the game, since I did get it working, which I can manage. It's just a hassle. Any changes in the 2013 remake will be noted. Now that's clear, let's continue. Remember the bathroom complex in the 8 pages? Well, what if that was the whole game? Slender Sanatorium was the first in the Slender Shadows lineup. It follows your unnamed protagonist, presumably running from Slender, before getting into an abandoned sanatorium where the game starts. You're tossed into the middle of the sanatorium and have to make your way through without getting caught by Slender, which is obviously easier said than done. For the most part, Slender's AI is unchanged, or at the very least well replicated. Well, for the most part. I'm not sure if Slender is just more aggressive or if this is a bug, but in both the original and Unity remake, in this room, with only 3 to 4 pages, and Slender only being at his first difficulty spike, Slender turned me around and instantly stopped my run. This is really bizarre for 2 reasons. In 8 pages, Slender only does this about 5 pages in, or if you're taking too long, mostly the latter. In Sanatorium, my gameplay was only 4 minutes long before he killed me, while in the 8 pages it took nearly an average of 10 minutes to stop my run. This could be because Sanatorium is so close quarters, juxtaposed to 8 pages more open woods. However, this is where my second problem comes in, as Slender stopping my run feels like cheap bullshit half the time. Whoa, wait, Slender, you can't cheat like that!
God dang! How did he even kill you? He's like across the room from you!
Ignoring what his aggression levels may or may not be at, Slender is constantly killing me from quite a distance away. In 8 pages, Slender only does this when he's exactly right behind you. In Sanatorium and in later games, he'll still instantly kill you when you're about 10 feet away from him, making it a very frustrating experience as you can't strategize around Slender's cheap RNG kills like that. And this problem is not fixed in the Unity version. As a map, Slender Sanatorium suffers from quite a bit of problems. And seeing how this is the first Shadow of Slender map, it is to be expected. Unlike 8 pages and even later Shadows maps, Sanatorium's biggest problem is that everything looks the same. It's incredibly easy to get lost, even with the handy wiki map at your disposal. Every environment blends in. There's no writing on the walls saying where you are, or color differences to help you out. The most you get is a large lion statue, which can help direct you if you know the map, or have the actual map on your second monitor. But that's the only real environmental help you get, as long as you know where you are. The rest are just rooms, and more fucking rooms. Another thing I noticed is that the lighting in this game is just a bit too bright in some areas. In 8 pages, turning the lights off might make it harder for Slender to chase you, sure, but you can't see that much either. It's a risk-reward type system, while in Sanatorium you turn off your flashlight and you can see just fine. Sanatorium doesn't do much differently besides being indoors. After you grab all 8 pages, you're allowed to leave the building and win, or you could also succumb to the Slender Man. Trivia. The original ending to the game was much different. According to the wiki, apparently after collecting all 8 pages, your character will be given a gun and a chance to shoot the Slender Man. Once you defeat the Slender Man, you get a message. I did it. I escaped the nightmare that was haunting me, or so it seemed. It was then that I discovered that the Slender Man doesn't let his victims escape. He only chooses to. I have taken his physical body, and in doing so, he has taken my mind. I am Slender Man. However, this ending was scrapped in favor of a more tame one, and to be honest, the ending was a bit silly. The pages work differently in each version. In the original version, the pages always spawn in the same place. However, in the Unity remake, the pages spawns are randomized. Slender's jumpscare was changed completely in the Shadows game. Instead of the last frame being a close-up of his face, instead the camera or the player drops to the ground looking up at the Slender Man. There was a cut game mode for the popular YouTuber PewDiePie, who is largely credited for contributing to the popularity of horror games like Slender and Amnesia. In fact, references to YouTubers like PewDiePie and other popular YouTubers at the time, some who are still popular today, and others not so much. The pages in the original and the Unity version are quite different. In the original, the pages are a clean white page, like printer paper, while in the Unity remake, they're yellowish notebook pages, similar to the ones in, well, the 8 pages. I prefer the original, as using readily available printer paper makes sense. Slender Sanatorium was an overall success, with plenty of YouTubers playing it for their audience to watch, and some even downloading it for themselves for another Slender scare. Sanatorium was a very simple game, even compared to its predecessor, but it kept Slender in the light and gave YouTubers something to play while the creators worked on their next game. Well, if you thought Sanatorium was confusing to walk through, you haven't seen anything yet. Hospice is one of those maps where no map can really help you. While the environment is atmospheric, it runs back into the same problems where everything looks the same, with few landmarks to help keep your bearings. I was playing Hospice with a map on my second monitor, but even doing my best to follow that map, I just can't keep myself from getting lost, and end up running around in circles until Slender finds me. And Slender is another thing. He's pretty much the same from Sanatorium, but I think I figured him out a little bit more. In Sanatorium, he kept killing me from a distance, and that's probably because he works a bit differently from 8 pages. As in 8 pages, you're trying to avoid Slender as much as you can, which usually leads to you avoiding turning around, just focusing on where you're going next. If you see Slender, look away from him as fast as you can. That's what you usually do in 8 pages, right? While in the Shadow games, you do want to keep your distance, sure, but you also want to keep looking around for him as much as possible. Seemingly, this prevents Slender from teleporting close to you, as his AI is trying to look for an opening, so if you never turn around, he'll just always be behind you, eventually killing you, which could lead to him ending your run. But looking around doesn't seem to always help. What the?
What? He's not even close to you!
However, this is only my theory, as the wiki isn't very helpful in explaining Slender's AI in these games. Or should I say, it doesn't explain it at all. And there is no real walkthrough or video to help explain or teach any strategies to beat this game. The pages are interesting too. There are, I count them, 18 possible spawn locations on the map. Because it wasn't hard enough apparently. And when you start, it says you need to collect 16 lines of a poem. So for a solid second, I was pretty much assuming this game was impossible. However, collecting one page equals 2 out of 16 lines. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So you're still collecting 8 pages, with 18 frickin' spawn locations. If you're able to collect all the lines of the poem and escape, you get to read the full poem. Oh, should I travel through the woods, or should I wish I never would? For above me lurks within the trees, no one can hear my deathly screams. The palest man, the blackest suit, bigger than the tallest brute. 6 black arms will grab you up, or stalk you till you just give up. A top hat bears upon his head, makes your soul fill with dread. He takes you when you least expect, boil you up, and eat your neck. He'll leave your body not to eat, but to staple your corpse on a tree. Fear the man, the Slender Man, for he can do what no one can. Now, for some trivia. In Hospice, apparently you can take pages through the walls. I have never done this. Slender's model got a slight upgrade, changing his arms and legs a little bit. Personally, I never really noticed much of a difference. In an older build, Slender had a glitch where he would slide around the map. I haven't seen this in Hospice, but I did see this in Sanatorium. What do you see that? While I complain this map lacks sufficient landmarks, there is a particular one dubbed the Troll Wall, which is full of outdated memes and references, including the troll face, you mad bro, PewDiePie was here, a burning barrel, seemingly a reference to PewDiePie's disdain for barrels, and text in purple ink that reads out, penis. Moving on. There were also pictures on the wall of YouTubers, including the Rad Brad on the donation board. Andrew Oscar Delta is framed on the wall, a YouTuber with a decent following back then, who also played Slender. However, he hasn't uploaded since 2015. There is also Psy Syndicate framed on the wall, and his channel is still active, but he's renamed to Psy Sin and is primarily an Arbor YouTuber. The troll wall and photos of these YouTubers were removed in the Unity remake. Another reason why it sucks. Slender Hospice was still a success, with every YouTuber jumping in to make their next video, as the craze was only ramping up, which probably led to people excusing the rough edges of these games. But now that the craze is well over, I can say that the first 2 Shadow games I played were pretty frustrating, and not nearly as memorable or scary as the 8 pages. A flat map that becomes nothing more than a maze is pretty tiring to play through. Perhaps the next map is better?
Ring around the rosy pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
After a creepy lullaby to help get you comfortable, you get probably my second favorite Shadow map. At first, it looks like another indoor maze, but it really isn't. The map is just a big square with a courtyard, but there are more interesting landmarks as opposed to trees on a truck. There are severed heads, arms, corpses impaled on spikes on the wall, along with a man impaled on a tree. Slender isn't normally a game with gore in it, but it helps here to set a more disturbing atmosphere, especially when you consider you're probably playing as a child. Instead of pages, you're looking for teddy bears that are hanging off of hooks on the wall. Now, that's nice and all, but if all I have to say about this map is that it's simpler with a nice atmosphere, we'd be at the trivia by now. But Elementary has something up its sleeve, a new mechanic called Chase. First time playing, you probably notice that Slender isn't on your ass 24/7, like before. Instead, like in 8 pages, seemingly keeping his distance more. It doesn't instant kill you from 10 feet away. However, this comes with a unique drawback. While Slender's is seemingly less aggressive than before, he's only holding back. Collecting a certain number of teddies will trigger his chase, which triggers this music cue, if you can really even call it that. And Slender will start teleporting rapidly around you, and you will gain infinite stamina for 10 seconds until the chase ends. It's a very intense and scary moment, as when it starts, Slender can easily instant kill you. I do like this mechanic, as it allows you to play more of the game without getting a cheap, almost unavoidable death. This chase mechanic did not carry over into the Unity remake, however, it is in the rest of the original Shadow games after this. Once you beat the game, you unlock a poem titled, No, 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 No. I see you walking pale with fright, like so many other men, who could not hide, who could not fight, who no one ever saw again. I took them to the other side, for it's me who brings the night, faceless hunter, hidden eyes, watching to see your demise. Soon his 100 arms will hold your mortal body dead and cold. What really in the shadow lurks is one of the devil's finest works. Do you hear its haunting sound? By which your heart and soul are bound, silencing all your screams, following you into your dreams. Your sight will blur, your mind will bend, and when it does, your life shall end. You run and scream, and now you stop. You turn around, your pages drop. You beg me to let you go. Silence. No, 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 no. The poem was removed in the Unity remake. Now, trivia. In an older version of the map, there was a random door that could be opened. I don't believe I have it in my version, but it was clipped by Taste of Gaming, who had it in his version. The dead body parts might be a callback to the original mythos of Slender Man, in which is vastly different than the contemporary version. In the original mythos, he commonly tore people apart and made brutal messes. In the original release, there was a possibility of 9 teddy bears spawning, but only 8 are collectible. This was discovered by the now controversial YouTuber YamiMash.
There's 9 teddy bears? What the fuck? Guys! Ah! You tricked me! You tricked me! There shouldn't be 9 teddy bears! There shouldn't be 9 teddy bears! What the
Originally, players believed this map was based off of the Bath Massacre, a school car bomb attack in 1927 which killed 47 people including 38 children, and injured 58 others. However, Ray Bergs debunked this, instead saying his inspiration was instead Midwich High in Silent Hill. Would you guess it? Elementary was another success for the Slender Craze, and helped keep it more interesting by shaking up the formula a little bit. The chase mechanic helps fix Slender's over-aggressive reach he had in the first two games, and the map itself is more defined than previous maps, having a better atmosphere, and is much easier to understand. At this point, the Slender Craze was only picking up steam. Now, if you thought Elementary was good, you haven't seen what I consider to be the best Shadows game. Slender Mansion starts with a quick written prologue explaining the situation. A man stalked for months by Slender Man has fallen into a deep coma due to Slender's sickness. Trapped in his mind, he's taken back to a place dear to him, his childhood home. But he's not alone. Slender has followed him. Can you find enough childhood mementos to break him out of his coma? Or will he find you and kill your mind, trapping you in eternal darkness? The game starts at the entrance of the mansion, and you search your way through, finding glowing mementos. You need to collect 12, the most items or pages to collect in the whole series. Like in Elementary, this leads to Slender still being very dangerous, but more or less actively stalking you, rather than trying to kill you every corner. However, to make up for this, his chase mechanic returns, being triggered once you collect upwards to 9 mementos, and this time lasting 10 seconds. Not to mention Slender has an updated model, and it's probably my favorite version. He's much taller now, with a more squared face and natural skin tone color, rather than the round and completely pale face from before. I don't exactly know why, but I find this model a lot more intimidating. Anyway, as you go through the house, you find these keys, which unlock the best part about this map. Slender Mansion has unlockable floors that you can only access via these keys. However, the catch is that these keys only go to one door, which can lead to Slender trapping you if you're not careful. But if you choose the right door, you're granted access either to the basement or upstairs. Both are necessary to beat the whole game, as mementos are hidden on all floors. So Mansion is the first Shadow game to change up Slender's map formula. Finally. And I think it's the strongest map because of it. However, in the Unity remake, the keys and doors are completely removed, making each floor immediately accessible. And, of course, once all mementos are collected, you can then leave the mansion and survive. Now for some trivia. An odd thing I noticed is Slender's model seems to keep changing throughout my playthroughs. In one playthrough, he has big, large hands with long fingers, and in the other, he has normal hands with normal fingers. I don't know what's causing this. The more aggressive Slender Man becomes, the more tentacles will sprout from his back, reaching upwards to 8 tendrils. Due to there being different floors, there's a bug in the game where Slender will start floating in the air, which isn't hard to trigger at all and is quite humorous. One of the items you can collect is a giant grandfather clock, which most players find very unusual and very funny.
Grandfather clock. Don't tell me that's actually an item.
The items in Slender Mansion are not randomized, even in the Unity remake. A very interesting detail in Mansion can be found above the doors. As you can see, there's an unmistakable Nazi eagle, which at first seems very bizarre. But oddly enough, the original Mythos, Marble Hornets, and even other Slender fan games like Slender Haunt, the Nazis have an odd connection with the Slender Man. In fact, it's theorized that Slender originates from Germany. When you die, you hear a heart monitor sound play, confirming that your character, if caught, dies in his coma. Slender Mansion kept the craze alive, and was a breath of fresh air, changing the formula just a tad bit to add more elements like unlockable floors, and being in a house over some stupid complex. It was a good way to keep the franchise feeling fresh over the endless mazes of before. Slender Mansion is my personal favorite, and I have plenty of fond memories of me and my siblings playing it as a kid. At this point, I'm rather excited to see what the next entry brings.
Where am I? How did I get here? I can't remember. I must have blacked out. I need to get out of here. I have the worst feeling that something is following me.
Slender Claustrophobia takes place in a hedge maze. Okay. You're given a random spot, and your objective is to find roughly 10 keys to open a door. However, there is a slight chance you can open the door with fewer keys. The keys are usually placed at dead ends of the mazes, making collecting the keys pretty risky. There aren't very many landmarks, aside from a hut and a statue in the middle, which can help you know which side of the maze you're on, so that does help. But other than that, the map isn't very good in my opinion. In fact, I found it kind of boring. Slender himself is scary as always, but the map isn't very interesting when you're just wandering around completely aimlessly, which I suppose is the point. Funny enough, this is why I actually prefer the Unity remake. You spawn in the same location every time, and you get a very pretty skybox. Most shadow maps try to be creepy with his atmosphere, but I like that at least one tries to go for more color with this time. But we are scraping the bottom of the barrel if we're complimenting skyboxes. And besides, I got killed by a bush, so even then the Unity remake isn't that good. Trivia. Claustrophobia is the first shadow map to be completely outside. The minimum number of keys to escape is 6, giving you a 20% chance of leaving. A voice intro plays at the beginning of the game. It seems the protagonist is suffering from slender sickness. Both versions have this intro. Not only that, this is the first time someone is voiced in a Shadows game. Much like in Mansions, the key spawns are in the same place. Claustrophobia is the biggest map in the series so far, with it being 50% larger than Sanatorium. That's about it for Claustrophobia. I do apologize for the lack of trivia, as there wasn't anything very interesting about this map. It kept the Slender Craze going, but Claustrophobia isn't widely remembered as the other few maps, and I can see why. Now, this one is strange as I immediately ran into a problem. For whatever reason, the original 7th Street won't play. It keeps crashing at the loading screen. I don't know what might be causing this. I tried it several times. I even restarted my PC, but nothing worked. This means that I have to play the Unity version instead, so mechanics like the chase are missing as usual. 7th Street is a very interesting environment, as it's the first time we ever see Slender in an urban setting. Slender is usually in a forest or an abandoned facility, somewhere secluded or somewhere in your mind. The intro text in the original does hint that you might be suffering from Slender sickness, so it is plausible that this is only in your head. Either way, it's an unusual setting, but a unique setting for Slender. You're once again tasked to collect 6 pages, 8 in the original, on a rather small and basic map. I mean, look how close the pages are. In the Unity version, I believe they are randomized, unlike in the original where they seem to be static. Not that I can confirm that anytime soon. There is some cool environmental storytelling, like how the town seems to be walled off, as if the government is trying to contain Slender Man. Not sure how you could contain something that teleports, but A for effort. Once you collect all 8 pages, or 6, you are then allowed to leave. Trivia. Well, no. 7th Street doesn't have much interesting trivia to offer, mostly details of small things like Slender being able to slide, or how the Unity and original have different intros, but for the most part, nothing really noteworthy, which ironically is how most people felt about 7th Street. It was considerably easier, and fans found it much less scary than its predecessors. While the map environment was interesting, Mark and Ray were seemingly running out of ideas for their favorite faceless mythos. Well, this is the one I was dreading the most. Slender Prison is one of the ones that freaked me out the most as a kid. It's another maze-like map, collecting 8 pages on the floor, not the wall for some reason, making it more difficult to find them. They're mostly in cells, some have dead ends, while others have caves that are carved out for you to escape. The reason why I hated this one so much as a kid is Slender will cause a loud burst of static onto your screen, signifying if he teleported somewhere near to you, usually behind you. Now, with how much I feared this game as a kid, this must be Slender's most intimidating appearance, right? Well, not really. For some reason, even though Mansion's model was really solid and was used for the 3 other games before this one, the creator decided to swap his model out for a rather unimpressive one. It's definitely his weakest look, and even takes away from most of Slender's fear factor when it looks like he's mewing for some reason. Other than that, Slender acts much more differently this time around, as this is his hardest game yet. Once you pick up the first page, you have approximately 130 seconds to collect all pages and escape. However, the wiki explains that there is no timer, but instead Slender has an aggression system that rises over time. If he reaches 120 points, he'll start teleporting around you rapidly, even if he's in your view, so you can't stall him, and you'll likely die. Once you collect all pages, you can then find a ladder to escape. Now for some trivia. This is the first and last Shadow game to have your hand visible. Unlike some of the Shadow games, this one keeps the page spawns randomized on all versions. When playing, there's a chance you can hear a man scream. The Slender model used in this game sucks. Admittedly, I'm running out of things to say about Slender Shadows, but this is where we reach a turning point. On December 1st, an official sequel was announced for Slender the 8 Pages, called Slender the Arrival, giving a new spark to the Slender Craze, as many fan games, including Shadows, were running out of ideas for Slender and his usual formula. However, a few months after Prison was made, Mark and Ray, with the Unity engine, remastered all of their previous games, and created their last Slender game with it.
Sophia, my daughter. She's been missing for over a week. The police have turned up nothing in their search for her. Lately I've been having these images, these distorted flashbacks of a nearby carnival abandoned long ago. I don't know what is drawing me to this place, but I'm going to investigate it. It may hold the key to finding my daughter.
Now, we are at the last Slender Shadow game that actually counts. In Carnival, you play as a father looking for clues about his daughter's disappearance. This leads to my least favorite thing about this map. All the evidence are different items spread around a map where everything looks the same. There are no real landmarks to help keep your bearings, again, a common problem with these maps. And the items you're looking for don't glow or anything. It's not just pages, there are dresses and shoes, etc. So you're looking for different items that blend into the environment while trying to avoid Slender Man. And to be fair, if I had more time, I could probably beat this game pretty easily, as Slender isn't too difficult. He's pretty easy to avoid. Like in Prison, your camera will static when he's right behind you, letting you know exactly when you should run. Other than that, the map isn't my favorite, and it's probably the most forgettable one. Now for some trivia. An early trailer for Slender Carnival hints that the game was originally going to be set in Ukraine, Pripyat, at the abandoned Ferris wheel. For whatever reason, this really cool idea was scrapped. They probably didn't want to deal with noon. The original flashlight from 8 Pages returned, as opposed to the surround illumination from before. In the prologue, your character talks about seeing visions and feels like he's drawn towards the carnival, hinting that he might be infected with Slender's sickness. Slender Man's 3D model still makes him look like a fucking moron. Slender Carnival didn't receive much of the same praise as its predecessors. It was bundled with the rest of the Unity remakes, and in my opinion, the whole Unity library feels like a downgrade compared to the original. It also doesn't help that Slender the Arrival was announced by this time, so many fans couldn't keep their hype up when a AAA game was around the corner. Now for some honorable mentions for the other Slender fan games. If you want to see me play them, let me know. Maybe next Halloween I'll dedicate a video to the forgotten Slender fan games. Anyway, here they are. Slender Shadows, a Christmas special. So this is technically the last Slender Shadow game, but I don't really count it, as it's mainly there as a joke. Because of the type of video this is, I didn't have a place for it. Slender Woods. Slender Woods was a bit more ambitious. It was more of a story-focused game rather than the other fan games at the time. Deserves an honorable mention. Plus, you could shoot Slender in the game. Slender Haunt, the real Slender game, also known as Haunted Memories: The Return. This was an extremely ambitious story-based Slender game, which I believe was set out to give Slender, or in this game, Mark Slender, a backstory involving the Nazis. It had to be renamed due to copyright problems. While it's difficult to find and play, it's loved by the Slender community for its own take on the Slender lore. Slender the 9 Pages. Pretty obscure unless you watch a lot of Markiplier back in the day. The game itself is not exactly of high quality though. Slender in Space. Pretty self-explanatory, it's Slender Man in Dead Space. Slender Anxiety. This one came after the Arrival and it really shows. The UI is ripped from the game, along with the jump scare being exactly the same. Slender, Gaze of Horror. A less subtle Slender game that emphasizes gore rather than the more common psychological horror of Slender. Also gave Slender a face for some reason. And that's all I can really think of off the top of my head, as all of these games, great, mediocre, or ridiculous, will be overshadowed by the largest Slender release we may ever see. Finally, the big climax of the Slender Craze. Slender the Arrival was a very anticipated release, with fans crossing their fingers hoping that a AAA studio can do Slender justice. Can they? Well, let's find out together. One thing I will mention is that I will solely be playing the remastered version of this game. Now, I understand that kind of goes against what I talked about before, that I want to play these games with how they felt back then, but I don't have time to play both versions, and the story is exactly the same, minus the new episodes in the remaster. However, where need be, I will mention any changes or differences between the versions. Without further ado, let's play. The game starts with your character named Lauren leaving her car due to a tree blocking the way, and going on foot to her friend Kate's house. It's a long walk, as the intro credit plays to the game. Once you reach her house, you find it abandoned with crazed writing all over the wall. Once in, you can explore and find notes and even a recorded message from a character called CR. You find a flashlight and keys and head towards Kate's room. Before you open the door, you find something waiting for you outside the window. Slender's design is interesting to me. Obviously, they couldn't use the outdated 8 Pages design, so they had to make a new one. The original Arrival design isn't bad, but it always looked off to me. He's very bulky and stiff, and in the remaster, they changed his design up a bit. While I do like that he looks closer to the 8 Pages model, he also has a nose and an eye ridge, which I really don't like. I know there are plenty of iterations that have Slender with some facial features, including the 8 Pages and some of the Shadow games, but I personally prefer it when his face is completely smoothed over and his proportions aren't usually long. To me, that helps make him feel more unsettling, but I'm getting off track. After Slender disappears, you enter Kate's room and see all the pages on the walls, along with a broken window. There's a message written for you, asking if you can see the radio tower, and that you should go to it. You leave the house and hear a scream in the distance. You then follow a path, setting up generators as you go down, until you find a burnt house. You can either ignore it, or explore at your own risk. However, once you go inside, you find something standing in a corner. If you get too close... yeah. Once you get to the entrance to the park, you find a notebook written by Kate, expressing her regrets for not listening to CR, and her fear of Slender. Once you read that, the prologue ends, and you start the next chapter. The chapter starts with you going into a park. This segment is kind of like a reimagining of Slender the 8 Pages, which this chapter is aptly named after. At the beginning, you could pick up a large sign, giving you a funny achievement for picking up an item that is too large for you to carry, yet you do anyways, which feels like a nod to Slender Mansion's grandfather clock. Anyway, you follow some paths to find 8 Pages, while Slender stalks you. Now, I have a small confession. Throughout these games, I've been playing like a complete wuss, which shouldn't be a surprise, to be honest. I keep the volume on my PC low so I could get through the games a bit easier. As you can see, it didn't help whatsoever. However, I also decided to play Slender the Arrival on the easiest difficulty. I did this for 2 reasons. 1, because I am a pussy, and 2, I needed to get through these games relatively fast so I can meet my deadline. So while I expected an easier time than the other games, I wasn't prepared to be underwhelmed. Now, I want to make it clear, I am not criticizing the game's difficulty. That would be ridiculous. But I found the moments when I encountered Slender a bit anticlimactic. In 8 pages, you get an almost blinding amount of static when you see him, along with a very alarming sound effect that plays. In Arrival, the effects are just your camera getting shaky, no real static. And the sound effect that plays when you see him is trying so hard to be over dramatic and scary, or just overstays its welcome. Again, maybe my point is moot, as I'm not playing the game on its hardest difficulty. However, you need to beat the game to reach its hardest difficulty, so this is kinda how the game is meant to be played. Besides that, after you collect all pages, Slender Man teleports behind you and makes you run through the forest until you knock yourself out, transitioning to the next chapter. After you are attacked by Slender in the woods, you wake up on the forest floor. It's daytime, but instead of leaving and going home, you go towards the radio tower, which leads you to the abandoned Coleman Mining Co. Of course, you decide to go there, even though you're being chased by a monster. You make your way down until you go into a room, which locks the door behind you. You read that 6 generators must be turned on in order to power the lift so you can escape. So, you go in and start looking for the remaining generators. And this is where you find your new enemy, the Chaser, a proxy that seems hell-bent on hunting you down. You don't know why it's after you yet, but one thing is clear, it's working with the Slender Man. It runs faster than you can, but there is a solution. If you focus your flashlight on it, you could stun them and keep them at bay, which is very useful. But it's not the only threat, as Slender is in there with you, so you have 2 things to deal with while you search for the generator. Once you power them all on, you can then go up the lift into the forest. Once you escape, you make your way closer to the tower. However, you find a large teddy bear with the name Charlie written on it, which starts the next chapter. You play as Charlie on the beach as your parents are having a picnic, while Charlie gets distracted by finding toys laying on the beach, not realizing that the toys are just luring him deeper into the forest. Once he goes down, it's too late. His parents start yelling for him, wondering where their boy went, and as Charlie looks for a way out, it attacks. Slender's tendrils start chasing Charlie until it corners him and consumes him while his parents yell his name in vain. As you continue down the path, you find it split. Going to the highest point, you find the little shed, which is where you could start the chapter Nightmare. This chapter wasn't in the original Arrival. It follows Charlie's dad as he's being haunted by his proxified son, before seeing Slender himself. He's randomly in the hospital, searching around for an escape. Every time you get close, you get blocked out each time. It's a pretty long chapter with admittedly not much that happens, except for the end, where once you escape, you see your kid, Charlie, crying alone, before getting jump scared and being surrounded by the Slender Man. You wake up in the hospital with flaming messages on the wall telling you that you can be cleansed with fire, which might be a callback to the original Slender mythos, where he commonly burnt his evidence down. Once the flames rise, you see your character dying in a fire, and seemingly in the burnt down house you saw at the beginning. Once you are done with that part, you then move down the hill and into a shed, which has 2 VHS tapes waiting for you. Starting with Homestead, which is another add-on from the remake, and it kinda drags on like Nightmare did. You play as CR, or Carl Ross, investigating the disappearance of Charlie. You investigate the farm, and as you go deeper, you see Charlie running around. It's mostly for scares. He doesn't do anything until you get to the wheat field, where he chases you into the church. Once you read a note learning that the family of Charlie might have been cursed by Slender and that the curse is spreading to others. However, Charlie chases you out, and the tape ends there. The last footage is from Kate. She's drawing her usual Slender stuff before realizing that Slender is around. She goes to lock up her house, however, she knows he's already inside, and that she must hide. However, there is no time, and Slender is right behind her, leading her to jump out of the window. I don't know why, but this chapter ends very abruptly for me. I saw gameplay of people actually running around, closing windows and doors and locking up, but for me, every time I look out the first window, he's inside and I jump out immediately, so I didn't get to experience the actual chapter as it was meant to be played. Once you leave the shed, you go further down and find a tunnel. There's Craze writings all over the wall talking about his arrival and how everything needs to burn. And it's too late for you. As you go deep, you find that the forest is now in a blaze, but you still need to make it to the tower, as Slender attempts to stop you from doing so. Once you make it into the tower's bunker, you find the remains of CR and hit play on his camera, and hear his final moments play out.
Kate, please. There's no other way. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. I'm so sorry.
You are then attacked by Charlie, and find yourself back in the burnt house at the beginning, with Charlie keeping you at bay. You find a few notes before Charlie mysteriously leaves, letting you go upstairs. As you make your way up, you find who you've been looking for this whole time, your dear, loved friend Kate. Alone, crying and afraid, you walk over to her, perhaps as your last attempt to comfort your dear friend, but she has little need for your comfort. After you beat the main game, you unlock a bonus level called Genesis, in which you play through the original 8 pages map, revealing that in the original game, you were playing as Kate the whole time. At the end of the level, once you get all 8 pages, Slender catches you and says, "I have plans for you, Kate," insinuating maybe he let you live at the end because he needed you alive for the next stage of his plan. Besides that, it's a really faithful remaster and is a lot of fun to play through and very nostalgic. And that's the official end to Slender the Arrival. There is another ending if you beat the game on hardcore mode, where Kate jumps off the radio tower instead of being taken by Slender. There's also a secret level where everything's glitched and you have to play hide and seek with the Slender Man. Overall, The Arrival was a solid game, but I do feel like it's taken back a bit, with how little Slender's presence really was. He only really hunts you down in 2, somewhat 3 of the 10 chapters of the game. The rest of the game is completely linear with scripted events. However, this game was mainly a story game than a survival game. The original 8 pages didn't care if you died or not, but The Arrival does, as it wants you to experience the story. So Slender and his proxies had to take a back seat for that. There is the hardcore mode, but I don't really have time for that anymore. Either way, Slender the Arrival was ironically a good send-off. Slender the Arrival met a very mixed reception. While there were praise and even negative reviews about it, the Arrival was mostly stuck in the middle, and I have to agree. While I did enjoy the game, I felt a bit disappointed with the linear direction it went towards. After the Arrival, the Slender Craze was finally starting to wrap up. Fan games, pranks, and sightings were still made, but at this stage, anything that could be done with Slender was done. Everyone saw what he can do. They read up on his mythos, they followed Marble Hornets, and they played all of his games. Not to mention, Slender was becoming a bit overly complicated, as people kept mixing up all his different abilities from all the different mythoses that kept popping up, making Slender very confusing for any new fan. However, there's another thing that happened that people blame for Slender losing his popularity. Something sinister and very tragic. Now, I'm going to stop with the music and the voice here, as we're going to be talking about a very serious and sensitive topic. Please skip to this timestamp if you can't stomach what you see on screen. With that being said, let's address the Slender stabbings. During the spring of 2014, a very tragic and disturbing event took place in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Two mentally unwell girls, Enisa E. Wire and Morgan E. Geyser, got into the Slender Man mythos. This particularly affected Geyser, who was suffering from undiagnosed schizophrenia, probably from very serious trauma she endured from her father, who she claimed was sexually abusive towards her, while Wire was suffering from shared psychotic disorder and claimed that her parents were neglectful, and that her mother committed incest. The two girls were convinced that Slender was real and was going to harm them and their family, so they decided that they were going to sacrifice their friend Lutner. They had a sleepover and then went into the forest to play hide and seek at the park, which is where they both attacked Lutner, pinning her to the forest floor and stabbing her 19 times, before leaving her for dead, so the folklore can take her. However, it never came. Lutner then crawled out of the forest onto the road where a biker saw her and called an ambulance for her. She was taken to a hospital and her wounds were treated. Wire and Geyser were apprehended 5 hours later. They claimed that they were going to meet Slender at his mansion. The two girls were trialed as adults for the severity of their crimes. However, due to their mental illnesses, they were found not guilty by reasons of mental disease or defect. While Wire expressed regret for her actions and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, Geyser showed no remorse for her actions and accepted the plea deal. Wire was let out in 2021, while Geyser is set to be released in 2025 under adult supervision. While we can enjoy Slender Man for what he is, a campfire story that's meant to keep us up an hour after our bedtime, this story isn't that. I didn't want to really talk about this event, as I was trying to keep the video lighthearted and spooky, but this was a real tragedy that traumatized a whole town, and is forever part of this creepypasta's legacy. However, after the stabbings, Lutner, despite suffering so much, is trying to put the event and trauma behind her and live a normal life, deciding that she wants to take a career in the medical field so she can help people in need. And honestly, I wish her the best of luck. Okay, now that we addressed that, let's move on and bring the mood back. While the Slender stabbings was a huge stain on the creepypastas, I think people are misremembering. I don't think the stabbings were truly the nail in the coffin for Slender Man. First of all, as disturbing as it may sound, the stabbings gave Slender Man more popularity. Everyone was talking about him. And you also have to remember that despite what those teenagers have done, Slender is still just a game. A story, an urban legend. Blood wasn't on Slender's hands, it was on two very mentally unwell girls, one of which claims she spoke to Voldemort and one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And as I stated before, Slender was kind of on his way out already, well before the stabbings occurred. In 2013, when Slender's big AAA game was released, a rival went up against Outlast, Amnesia, Machine for Pigs, Dead Space 3, The Last of Us, Resident Evil 6, and a game more horrifying than any of the ones I just noted previously, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Slender just didn't stand out anymore in the AAA space. Slender wasn't doing anything different from any of these games, especially on a gameplay level. Outlast also followed a character recording his findings while trying to escape horrific enemies. Which directs us to another problem people seem to forget, which is at this time, the horror genre was getting pretty stale. Great games were coming out, sure, but none were innovating. There just needed to be something new. During 2014, a new indie game called Five Nights at Freddy's came onto the scene and took the world by storm. It had a new gameplay loop that wasn't really done before. Instead of making you do things you don't want to do or explore and search for something with a dangerous threat nearby, FNAF simply had you in an office, sitting in one place, waiting for the monsters to come to you, only being able to stop them by shutting the doors, which simultaneously takes up power, in which you need to save up on. It was very unique for the time. Suddenly, YouTubers who were playing Slender were now screaming over haunted animatronics. Animations, mods, cosplays, you name it. The internet had its new hook. And while Slender was still around and respected as an internet horror icon, FNAF quickly overshadowed Slender. This is easily showcased when the Game Theory Twitter account asked fans if they'd like an episode about Slender or Five Nights at Freddy's, and in MatPat's words, FNAF won overwhelmingly. It seems Slender had its day, but maybe there's something left under its sleeve. The 2018 Slender movie. It follows a group of teenagers who decide to summon Slender via an internet video. They then start suffering from nightmares and start seeing Slender himself. They try many ways to try to get Slender to leave them alone, however he never budges, leading to all the main characters dying to Slender Man. The film had its fair share of controversies. Not only did it come out well after the Slender Craze was over, but it was also 4 years after the stabbing occurred, and obviously a story about schoolgirls trying to summon Slender Man, even having a scene where one of the girls tricks her friend's little sister into seeing the Slender Man, came across as very insensitive, especially from the town of Waukesha, where they didn't even air the movie. But even without the controversy, the film just isn't very good. The effects are rather poor, the scary scenes aren't really good or intense, the characters do stupid crap all the time, and they made Slender some sort of tree god, which feels like a strong departure from the original source. But I will say, despite this odd change, I do think his design is really cool and unique for Slender. However, the film did extremely poorly at the box office, with many people rolling their eyes just from the trailer alone. And with that, aside from Slender the Arrival remake in 2024, nothing new came from Slender. His era was officially over. As years go by, Slender has become an old relic from the past, a time capsule. And while Blue Isle Studios is making a sequel to The Arrival called S, The Lost Chapters, which not only doesn't directly bear Slender's name, Slender doesn't even appear in the promotional material. However, we have yet to see what that game is like, and what we are left with is a very interesting legacy, one that came out of nowhere and took control of the internet. With one game starting a huge craze of passionate fans, it gave us laughs, tragedies, and even disappointments. It's unclear whether Slender will ever make a comeback and become mainstream. Maybe Lost Chapters will bring people back, maybe someone will take another crack at making a film about him, or maybe he'll just stay as another folklore, a legend, a mythos. Maybe he doesn't need to come back. Maybe he's just fine where he is, in his woods, mansion, maze, or even in your mind. While Slender has been gone for a while, he isn't dead. He's a memory now. Thank you all so much for watching. This is my biggest project yet, so please hit the like button and subscribe and leave a comment. I worked really hard on this video and I hope you enjoyed it. Now that this video is over, you can unwrap yourself from your blanket, turn on the lights, and put away your mug. And you can remember that you are completely safe. There is nothing after you. No proxies watching you from, say, a YouTube video you're watching, and Slender is not behind you. I wouldn't lie to you. Would I?